Justice. Justice is something we usually want, I think. I mean, not everybody. We've talked about environmental justice. We usually want that. We don't want people to live in injustice anyway. That's bad. Most people would like to have some form of social justice as long as it doesn't bother their own position too much.
If this was actually how the book was written, it would be so much more easier to understand.
Well, you know, I'm trying to relate it to our times, the idea of justice. We had that whole species of justice, and, you know, I don't know, maybe we don't want justice, but we don't like injustice. As we talked about, injustice you can kind of feel. And we kind of want to have justice. Like, you know, I was thinking, we would like to have justice for Caelum Gillis, shot for driving up the wrong driveway in New York and tried to turn around. So sad, so young, so nearby. Seems like it. We would like to have justice for Ralph Yarl, shot going to the wrong door, Kansas City. So we'd like to have justice. And we don't want, we talked about this, we don't just want procedural justice. We don't just want people to go to court and be like, all right, well, they went through the system. System works. No, we want some real justice. We want substantive justice, right? Well, I don't know if we want retribution. I mean, I don't know if we want to go full Martin Luther on these people or on the world. There's some Latin for you, I guess.
You know what this means? Nothing world.
Do I know what this means? I would not have known what this means.
So you just put it up on the board.
No, he tells us what it means. He tells us what it means right there on page 126. It's Latin. Where'd it go? Oh, yeah, I mean, he doesn't tell us what it means for a while. It's true, it's not right after it. It's usually better if they put it what it means right after it. But you have to go down the page a little bit, blah, blah, blah. Let justice be done even if the world perishes. Let justice be done even if the world perishes. And you are tempted to say that sometimes when certain injustices are around. You just want the whole thing to go down. Even if the world burns, let justice be done, even if the world perishes. Of course, Zeke, this brings up a little bit of a question, though. It's a little harsh, right? It sounds good. I don't even know if it sounds good on paper, but yeah, sure. In theory, it sounds good when you yell it out. Yeah.
Like this world is like about the gospel of God and all that, and then it kind of goes to whose questions, like whose world, whose justice.
Whose world? Yeah, the question of what the world is kind of interesting here, and we'll talk about that in a bit, because the idea that there is a world that can be ended is kind of, you know, I mean, that's far out there, right? I mean, you can end the whole world. But yeah, the idea of whose justice certainly comes up here. Who gets justice? And in this context, mostly the person, there's a couple of people who say it, but we'll just go with Martin Luther for a while here. You know, and he uses it a few times, mostly. Actually, did you catch who he was trying to bring to justice here, even if the whole world goes down, Zeke? Yeah, you know, prostitutes and some houses of ill repute and brothels, right? You know, bringing it down on the sex workers, man. Let justice be done, even if the world perishes. Don't associate with them, or, you know, man. Throw peace to hell. No sex work. Throw peace to hell and get them out of here. Yeah, it's a little bit harsh, man, especially, I mean, come on. Really? Just for a few brothels? Jeez. And then he goes on. Actually, Tori, I was kind of surprised that you liked this. You said you liked it. A companion Latin legal phrase, usually paired with the one we have been examining, is Fiat justitia. What? Let justice be done even if heaven falls down. Let justice be done even if heaven falls down. Wait a second. When all is said and done, justice brings the earth and the sky to their demise, and it survives their devastation. Wait, you like that? You want heaven to be brought down, earth and sky to its demise, and justice prevails? Is that what you like?
I feel like that's kind of cool, you know? Like the power of justice, you know what I mean? Like, wow.
Wow. I don't know.
Ultimate after system.
It's cool on paper. I don't know if I want you being my judge, though. I mean, you know, I've done a few things in my life. I don't know if I want justice brought in your form. Woof. So, you know, anyway, however much we like justice, we do have to consider that it has these kinds of roots, and people want to destroy the whole world just to get rid of a couple brothels. Then
They show their poetry out to their favorite listener.
we then have a long section on Immanuel Kant. I can't do this. Oh, that actually worked. I was so afraid it wouldn't work. It was so cheesy, but I really don't understand what the heck Kant is doing in here. Does anybody get that?
What page is that?
It's like between the pages that we're about to go to. I'm just going to skip straight to Hegel, I think. Cass, you said you've been doing some Kant. You got anything?
No, we talked about it in the first half of my math class this semester. It was like an entire book talking about health through the perspective of philosophy, and absolutely none of it made sense to me. They talked a little bit about Heidegger, so I was kind of familiar with him, but like, I got nothing on this one.
You got nothing on Kant. Anaya, who would we go to for Kant? Oh, you're going to go to Heidegger as well. Yeah, Heidegger is, oddly enough, in some way more understandable than Kant maybe writes a few hundred years later. You had to read Being and Time, he said, with
I don't remember his last name, but it was like Jeremy
Wisniewski.
Yeah.
Spends a whole semester reading Being and Time. I think I could maybe get it if I had that much time. Maybe. It's still a lot. Once you get to the end. Yeah, I think there are a couple professors here who could take us through the Kant part of things. Yeah, you're gonna take us through Kant?
My base concern is like 3 other side trees, and I need to respect.
I think that would be great.
That's what I can.
There's some sort of ethical thing to this, yeah, that I think that in here at least, he's talking about this justice part, and I mean, there's a lot of stuff that he wrote. And I think that's true. Let's go with that for Kant. You know, let's jump into Hegel. Hegel, I think, at least here things get, well, Anaya, you like this quote from Hegel, and we switch into German. So if I can't read Latin, I'm certainly not going to read the German. Any readers of German here? No one's been to California. No one's been to California?
I've been to California.
Oh, wait, you said you hadn't been. Zeke, you've been to California. You there for the super bloom? No, the wildflowers. That was last class. Nobody reads German either?
My aunt used to work over Canada.
All right. All right, Anaya, what do you got for us?
About like existing, and once you get like the consciousness of that you exist in a given time, you can once you like kind of embrace the fact that we're all gonna die, like we're working to die, and like once you're born, the only thing that they're promised is to die. So like once you understand that and grasp that concept, you can like free yourself from anxiety and like wanting to have or like waiting for that to like happen, you can like free yourself from free. So this quote, I feel like it's basically saying like the freedom is that, like that's your freedom.
And that's we got from the end of at the end of being in time. Is that what came to you? To the whole class?
Talk about like just how self and society and like the role that it's playing. And how just like existence, like how you exist.
Yeah, well, that sounds good. That sounds like something we can, that sounds like if we combine Kant, be nice to people and don't be so afraid of dying, we're probably in good shape. So that's great. I don't know. I get a little bit weirded out by this quote personally. The sole work and deed of universal freedom is in fact death. That sounds almost like freedom is death. That sounds like we're going to have justice as the world coming down and ending for me. But fortunately, Hegel is a smart guy. And if you come out on the other side of death, well, once this happens, Cass, what happens?
Basically, if you can overcome the death thing and kind of like just come to terms with things, you can achieve peace. Like you have to come over the other side of death and then you will achieve freedom. It's kind of sort of rebuild things after.
Yeah, Hegel is a curious person, he had that whole Hegelian dialectic stuff. And, if you have the end of something, but that's the seeds for the new beginning part of things. And here we have Hegel doing his Hegelian thing. If the world has an end, that end is, in keeping with Hegel's thinking, the realization of freedom. There's Anaya's realization of freedom, and therefore a new beginning. The absolute beginning, one might say. So we all first had the absolute end, but now we have the absolute beginning. Unlike abstract universal freedom, the realized freedom he invokes does not demand the sacrifice of existence as such, and as a whole to the Moloch of an ideal. Whoa, what the heck? Unlike abstract universal freedom. So I think what he's saying here is, we had these ideas of abstract justice, abstract freedom, which was going to bring the whole world to a death or an end. But this is not abstract. This is a realized freedom in which we don't have to sacrifice existence. We can keep on going, or we can have an absolute beginning, or we can pop a little plant out of the sidewalk there, which is what PowerPoint told me to do. And so we get a rewrite of this, or he says we should rewrite the saying. So instead of let justice be done so that the world, or even if the world ends, we should rewrite it. That's over on page 132. Let justice be done so that the world flourishes. Let justice be done so that the world flourishes, which is a pretty great or better way to have justice. I like a justice being done so that the world can flourish, not so that they're going to bring everything to an end. Get rid of all the fun stuff in life. That sounds very Lutheran. Now, I want to go back to that notion that Zeke was talking a little bit about the world, right? The idea that the world is going to end. And what is this world? At the very beginning of the chapter, Martyr talks a little bit about the world. He says, we might take solace, comfort, in the assertion that the world as such and as a whole does not really exist and has never existed. So if somebody's going to say, let justice be done so that the world, even if the world ends, we can take a little comfort in the fact that you're not going to really end the world. Come on, there's no such thing as a world that you can just end by getting rid of a few brothels. So that's not going to happen. But he does say that the problem is the one world of an empire, later on reworked into that of globalization, makes the prospects of a thoroughgoing world destruction eerily plausible. So in our times, we have witnessed, I guess we are still in a state in which we could bring an end to the whole world if we wanted to. We
So
could
the
just,
end of, like, government system. Colonialistic.
well, no, I'm just talking about something that I guess I used to worry about a lot and you don't worry about so much anymore, which is that people were just going to launch a bunch of nuclear missiles at each other and bring the whole world to an end. Wait, you don't worry about this? You do?
Yeah,
Like Russian thing,
yeah, what do you think we are, we're like,
you know,
I just want to avoid a house.
see, he makes wonderful.
All right, so no, I know, I guess let me put it to you this way. It is true, you are and should, and me, all of us, should be more worried about the possibility of any one of us dying in a nuclear thing, right? Because the possibilities of that are probably more than when I was a kid, right? But when I was a kid, what we worried about was that there was going to be total nuclear annihilation. Russia, the Soviet Union sends all their nukes over to us while we send all their nukes over to them. And by send, I mean launch them all at the same time. That was my childhood. The day after, have you ever seen that? Yeah, that was me growing up, just stockpiling the water. This explains a lot. Because I thought in Montana we could all make it, you know. It's like, they're probably not going to bomb us because here we are in Montana, way far away from the cities. And so we'll just be able to have a basement. And
The thing is, in Montana is where all the nuclear weapon silos are.
that is a problem. That is a problem. In fact, when that surveillance balloon came over Montana, that's what they thought they might be looking for, those nuclear silos. The thing is, though, I was in western Montana in the mountainous part, so I figured they'd hit those guys and leave me alone, and I could make it. I was in good shape. Anyway, the point of the matter is that it is the world of colonization and the world of globalization, the modern world, which has brought this possibility upon us that we could end the whole world, that it is actually possible. Now, what he's trying to say is that in Hegel's words, or in our reworking of this, what we're trying to go from is that idea of the colonial world, which is also a mindset of the colonizers. This is on page 133. It actually works well with Hernandez, by the way. The mindset of the colonizers, that the people that lived in this colonized world didn't even count, that they had to be supplanted and have their trees all cut down and have plantations put up instead. This is on page 133. In the eyes of the colonizers, the colonial world prior to their arrival was not a world at all. It merged with the earth. So, you know, the idea was, hey, we just got this blank slate to go do what we want on. That's what we're going to do. What he is trying to tell us is that we're going to get instead to this idea of having multiple worlds, which is going to be better than the idea of having one colonial world, which is a very, brings about the possibility that we could all die. And in that sense, then justice becomes something else. Justice is not this abstract ideal that is unrealizable, that you can't get to, but it can it be seen as a coexistence between disparate worlds, allowing different worlds to coexist and just kind of rub up against each other in the same space without necessarily saying that one is good or bad, or some, you know, that you're going to get rid of somebody just for the sake of justice. Actually, this reminds me kind of Lyon's chapter on the Amazon, which talks about bettering conflict, right? That instead of trying to tamp out or destroy conflicting parties or bring all conflicts to resolution, that you just kind of let them live for a while, let them go for a bit. And in a little bit of a clever play on words, he says, this is just is justice. Justice is pretty slick, right? Just is. That's kind of like justice. he then takes on the authors of the book and their whole scheme of things, and he says, you know what? I like multi-world better than multi-species. Much prefer it, he says, multi-world to multi-species.
So he's going against the thought.
Yeah, he says, I don't know what you guys were thinking. I don't think he's a part of this project. He's just there to philosophize on it. But he's doing a good job. I kind of agree with him. He says this for a couple reasons. The person who talked about this is not, fortunately, here with us today, but one of the reasons he likes multi-world better than multi-species, as I understand it, is because species implies all of those demarcations and line drawings. And even if you want to say that species are permeable, and we've discovered how, you know, lions and tigers can get together and produce ligers, and you know, a lot of the biological boundaries of species that we once thought about are less distinct than we once believed. There's still that notion that everyone has their place and can be put into a hierarchy of species. The other thing he likes about this, or he likes multi-world better than multi-species, although he's not going to go on and on about it, is that if we talk about species and multi-species and trying to preserve species, then really in some ways we can be content with preserving their genetic signature. As long as we have their genes, we're fine. And he says, no, that's not good. Like, you know, you shouldn't just take a bunch of birds out of their wild habitat and say, we still got them. We still got the species. They're not dead yet. You have to think about the life world of these organisms and not just their genetic substance. So that's I think, an interesting point for us. And so on page 136, where he ends it, I think I'll not try to paraphrase here. Flourishing happens among worlds, between their dispersed ends and beginnings, in the unending middle of finite existence. We must henceforth learn perishing or going through to our ends otherwise than in the way that nihilistic metaphysics has taught us, to twist perishing into flourishing. Okay, I will try to paraphrase. Instead of thinking about justice as something nihilistic metaphysics that's going to bring about the end of the world, we have to twist perishing into flourishing. And that world pedagogy is the work of justice. So I guess going back to what we said about justice, that it's a justice that lets the worlds flourish instead of bring them to an end. Phew. Well, anyway, we read this a couple more times, we might get more out of it, but you might just go read Kant and Heidegger on your own. Some Hegel in there too. Yeah. There's one part of this that I just want to talk about for a bit. It's a little bit of a historical fact that I found fascinating. I think relevant to our next section as well. Something I didn't know. So when Luther is going around, when Martin Luther is doing his getting all upset about justice, we find on page 128 Luther's belief that the success of the army led by Sultan Suleiman I. I looked up this Sultan Suleiman I. He is also known as Suleiman the Magnificent, which is quite a thing to be known as. Sounds like a cool thing to be. But this is a sort of a sultan, an emperor that was attacking the Christian empires of Europe at the time. And so Martin Luther was worried about this person because he was coming in, to whom the cities Buda and Pest succumbed in 1527, which also freaked me out. The cities Buda and Pest. You ever been there? The Budapest. I know. It's two different places. It's two cities. There's a river between them. the cities of Buda and Pest. They were very different back in the day, and they still kind of are, but now we just call them Budapest. Everybody ever been here? Anybody know where that is? Hungary. Yeah. So here it is. There it is, Budapest, which happens to be two cities, Budapest. So here's, I don't know, Martin Luther. Where's he at? Somewhere around here? Where'd my pen go? Around here somewhere? No. Hanging out. And here comes Suleiman the Magnificent charging in to take over Budapest and basically threaten what was seen as Christian Europe from the East. I bring this up because this is the year 1527, and for Martin Luther was another sign that the final day of God's judgment was imminent. Right, so 1527, he's like, it's all about to go down. God's about to judge this place. And Suleiman coming in and taking over Buda and Pest is a sign that, you know, things are about to end. I bring this up because in my own world, or when I talk to you about things, by the year 1527, we're getting close to, for example, the time of the fall of Tenochtitlan, the invasion of the Americas. It looks like Spain and Portugal are pretty much on their way to establishing a world empire. And by 1527, they've expelled the Jews from Spain. They've started the Spanish Inquisition. They've expelled the Muslims from Spain. It seems like Christian Europe is on the rise. But the reason I bring this up is because if you're sitting over here with Martin Luther, you might not think that. You might think that things are going the other way, that you're about to get overrun by Suleiman the Magnificent, who has just taken Buda and Pest and is about to come your way and mess you up. Now, I say that because sometimes we get stuck in a historical framework that thinks that, you know, Europe's domination of the world was somehow inevitable. I don't know. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe Suleiman might have come in there and exercised some justice and judgment on wherever Martin Luther was sitting, and the next thing you know, it wouldn't be so much of a European thing at all. It is still true that Spain and Portugal, these two tiny little places on the Iberian Peninsula, by the time of 1790, this was the extent of their empire, had occupied all of what is now Brazil for the Portuguese, and all this land in South America was claimed and run by the Spanish through the Aztec Empire, all these Caribbean islands, the state of Florida, all this part of what was here in New Mexico. And I mean, it's sort of interesting to me when we were thinking about Hernandez's book, and, you know, she talks about being part of, you know, the colonized of her father in El Salvador, an indigenous community that was colonized with Spanish, and her mother's family in Oaxaca. But, you know, even where she lived in California and what is now Seattle were all claimed by the Spanish and run by the Spanish at the time. And in fact, the Spanish had sailed all the way up to Alaska way before the English ever got there. So it's a pretty amazing thing that the Spanish did and had this whole empire. And so that's the reason sometimes I think of this as a thing that was coming westward. But it's important to realize that history is interesting and not inevitable, and there are other ways that this might have gone down, including if, you know, if these places hadn't become independent from Spain, or if there hadn't been a Haitian Revolution, and so Napoleon didn't want to sell us those French territories there. But like I said, Spain has a lot of territory here. It'll come up in our next part a little bit, which has to do with Micronesia. That's what we're going into for the poem. Liz, you told us we needed to see something downstairs.
Right now in the Viega Museum, there is actually an exhibit about Micronesia.
About Micronesia. And so you learned about this because the Oh, because of the exhibit. But you thought about it because of the Micronesian kingfisher, which is not in the exhibit, but there you are. Is that you? Over here somewhere. Can't see very well. Not the best photo. Students plan prepare 2023 Jaeger Museum exhibit. I read about this exhibit. Turns out that the students determined there is not a lot of general knowledge about the island group of Micronesia. I think that's true. So you can go down there and see it. Tonight, you can have a 2-for-1. You can go down to the museum, hear Louis play some jazz, and his fellow cohort, the Harvick Jazz Combo, 5 to 6 in the Jaeger Museum. See a few things from Micronesia right now, tonight. Of course, I don't want to take away from the take back the night. You could meet there in March at 4 p.m. outside Pereat. You could do the take back the night march from 4 to 5, go to jazz, then come back out and march again when it's more like night. Anyway, lots of things to do. Wow. That looks nice, huh? Like somewhere we should go. Look at that tree. Is that Greece? No, it's not Greece. Where do you think this is? No. Liz, where is this? Yeah, it has to be in Micronesia. That's what we're talking about. Come on, Greece. Oneonta. Oneonta, come on. What? We don't have a lake like that.
Wilbur Lake looks beautiful this time of year.
I got this from the tourist site. Welcome to Guam. So much more than its miles upon miles of sandy beaches, waterfalls, coconut trees, and coral reef ready for you to explore. Unparalleled sunsets. Oh, those must be good, yeah. Starry night skies and rolling mountains and valleys. Whoa. Yeah, we'll get to that. What is Guam? An island in the South Pacific. Who owns Guam? Yeah, this is a U.S. place. Although apparently it's kind of like Puerto Rico in the sense that they are U.S. citizens, but don't get to vote. But they are U.S. citizens. But apparently, unlike Puerto Rico, you can just go with, you don't need a passport to go to Puerto Rico if you're a U.S. citizen. But to Guam, apparently you should be carrying a passport, although they might let you in if you have a picture. How is it that the United States owns Guam? World War II. It was hugely important during World War II, but we already owned it. We. How did we get Guam?
During the Banana War?
The Banana Wars. You mean the Central America things? Getting closer. We acquired the Philippines from Spain. Yes, we acquired the Philippines from Spain. I mean, I think Guam was kind of part of the deal. Yeah, I don't think we actually had to fight for Guam. It kind of got thrown into the deal. So I guess we acquired Guam. There was a little bit of a fight in Manila over the Philippines. Yeah, I told you Spain would be important. Guam was colonized by Spain for a couple hundred years, and we got Guam, the Philippines, and Puerto Rico all in one fell swoop in 1898 around in the war against Spain. So, still have Puerto Rico. You know about that. U.S. citizens, but not voting. Still have Guam. There it is, way out there. Still have, no, we don't have the Philippines. But we had them for a while. There was about 30 years, 20 or 30 years, that, you know, they could have, some people wanted the Philippines to be a state. Some people in Guam say that this is where America's day begins. You ever heard that? Yeah? Why?
The time zone.
Time zones. Yeah, this is very close to the international date line. So in fact, when you wake up in, oh, I guess we're in the Eastern time zone. When we wake up here in the Eastern time zone and then think it's Monday, it's already been Monday in Guam for like 12 hours or so. So just think, those Americans over there are having a whole day ahead of us. As I was looking for this date line, I found that it's kind of like this. And then we also own this part, this island here, American Samoa, which I guess is where America's day ends because that's the last part of the day. Samoa is independent and they decided that they wanted to be on the other side, so they'd be in the same time zone as Australia and China. But if you go from Samoa to American Samoa, you can go back in time a whole day and then relive the same day if you want to.
Is it really the same?
Huh?
Is construct really?
Is it a construct? Well, I'll tell you, if you look into Google and search Guam, the first thing that people want to know is Guam time. And if you look up American Samoa, the first thing they want to know is American Samoa time. So they're very fascinated by this. And I spent far too much time thinking about it. Yeah, I spent far too much time in the construct of time, and now it's tomorrow. I also searched on the Micronesian kingfisher. And if I search on the Micronesian kingfisher, the first thing that pops up is the Guam kingfisher. It is looking fine. If I just searched on the Micronesian kingfisher and I just looked at it and I said the Guam kingfisher, I would say, good looking bird, man, looks great. I'll go to Guam and find them there. Go forward. No, I can't go back a day. I can go. Yeah, I can. Anyway, I can do something. I can go forward or backward in time to find the Guam kingfisher. Then I had to scroll down a bit. People also ask, some people ask this, is the Micronesian kingfisher extinct? Yeah, that's a good question. What do you think? It is classified as extinct in the wild. So it is not in Guam. Or I think there are a few places in Guam that actually have a couple of them now. But most of the time you can find it in zoos. Trying to breed it. Tyler, why? Why can't you find it in Guam?
Because it's a Guam with a natural laboratory now.
Well, let's get to the natural laboratory. What got rid of the the brown tree snakes? Yeah, I hesitated with this picture. Don't be scared. Ah! Yeah, I don't know if I want to go to Guam anymore. If you read upside down in the poem, Tyler came up with this great quote. The U.S. Department of Agriculture traps 6,000 brown tree snakes each year. So they trap about 6,000 of these guys on that little island of Guam. Yet there are still nearly 2 million. The most dense patches contain 14,000 snakes per square mile, one of the highest snake concentrations in the world. Miles of sandy beaches. Some places I never want to see in my life. Yes, the brown tree snakes came and they got rid of all the birds, so they had to take all the birds away and put them into zoos and hope they bred. You're right, Tyler, this is a natural laboratory, which sounds good. It's good to be a natural laboratory, right? No, it sounds good. It sounds good on paper. Hey, I'm in a natural laboratory. What kind of a natural laboratory is this? Well, it's a natural laboratory in the sense that there is no other place where you can see what happens when birds are removed from an entire ecosystem. So the snakes got rid of the birds, and now there are no birds, or at least no insect-eating birds. I don't want to be in this natural laboratory. No offense to Guam, but this doesn't sound like a good idea. And our poet is from there, as you might imagine reading it. So the other thing that's happened is that there's all kinds of spiders. So there's all sorts of spiders and spider webs. And so when you're going through the trees, you'd have to knock all the spider webs down. I don't want to over exaggerate. Some people, I was reading about these things, and some people in Guam say that people from outside of Guam like to exaggerate about the spiders and the snakes in an effort to scare people off and sensationalize. So I don't want to be too icky. But yeah, it's not the best experiment. How did the brown snakes get there? The brown tree snakes. The military. Yeah. Guam is a hugely important military base, as we found out. It's a key stopover if you're going into Asia. Probably a place we're going to use if we are defending anything in Asia. You might hear about this. It's got at least 3 military bases. It's one of the most important military bases that we have. We also have a very important military base in American Samoa, which we were talking about. And it turns out, if you read the poem on page 150, that there was a brown tree snake that got over to Diego Garcia, which is over here in the Indian Ocean. Also a U.S. military base. Hugely important because of the wars in the Middle East. Used to be a British colony. Ever heard of Diego Garcia?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the most secret bases that we have. In fact, you can't go there. The only people allowed on Diego Garcia are military personnel and natives to the island. The rest of it, nobody knows what's going on. Lots of planes go there. Apparently they had a brown snake land, a brown tree snake land there too, probably on a stopover from Guam. Anyway. We live in a very complicated world. This is like the 17th time in this class that we've learned something that we did not know about. Last class, we learned about COVID-19 and incarcerated persons in New York State. And now we get to learn about our far-flung web of military bases by which we keep everybody in line, or we try to. Many of which we have never heard about, and some of which we can't even get to. Anna, how does the poem end? He's in college in California, and he finally sees, he's from Guam, and he's been coloring pictures of them when he was a kid doing all these art projects, but he finally sees one in the San Diego Zoo. Oh, what does he say? I live here now, like you. Whispers to the birds. So that's something. Yeah, we have these all over the place, it turns out. There were a couple, I think you can see them in Philadelphia. You can see them in San Diego. There's a couple in San Antonio. They're getting very excited because when COVID-19 happened, they got the birds together, and they're not tired of each other yet. A little bird brothel going on. I don't know what Martin Luther would say about that, but there they are. They've shacked up. I don't know. There is something very bizarre that we have Micronesian kingfishers in all these zoos, and they say they're going to try and get them back into Guam somehow, some way, but there's too many snakes. There's some island off the coast that they're trying to get rid of the snakes there and maybe bring some of the birds into that island, and maybe they can work from there into the other place, but it's not easy. It's not easy. It almost makes me wonder. It almost makes me say, let justice be done even if the world comes to an end, When you think about things like this, you just want justice. You want the heavens and earth to come to their demise. But I guess I guess we have to be. No, we'll be hopeful. We'll be hopeful that the shacked up birds gonna do nice bird things, get rid of a few snakes. There's too many snakes. I mean, we can get rid of them off of one island. We can let them be on another island. Get everything fixed up and have a flourishing world again. Yay.